Imagine filing a $600,000 federal lawsuit over a pile of garbage that you intentionally left out on the curb.
Right.
Literal trash.
Literally.
Yeah.
Today, we are looking at what happens when the absolute lowest brow of internet trolling violently collides with the highest levels of federal copyright law. We are unpacking this really bizarre, highly litigious corner of the internet where podcasting drama is actively testing the legal boundaries of free speech, parody, and the right of publicity.
Yeah, and to understand the mechanics of this whole legal circus, we're pulling from a pretty fascinating stack of sources. So we've got a GoFundMe page launched by a rival podcast network, a wildly detailed forum thread from Kiwi Farms that just meticulously tracks all the legal filings, a local news article from News 15 in New York, and a really dense 2022 federal appellate court ruling involving SiriusXM. And we are going to impartially examine the claims from all sides here. But, we really have to look at why the internet community, specifically the OldTube ecosystem, is just gleefully labeling this a lawsuit. We'll explore the claims from the rival podcasters, the Shuli Network, who argued they're basically fighting this crusade for free speech against weaponized YouTube copyright strikes.
Absolutely. And we're going to dive into the historical legal context of the plaintiff's past attempts to control his digital footprint because, well, he's actually tried this before.
Yeah, so let's start with the plaintiff at the center of all this. It's John Melendez, who, you probably know from his decades-long career as Stuttering John.
Right, the former intern and personality on the Howard Stern Show, and then later he was the announcer for The Tonight Show with Jay Leno.
Exactly. But following the end of his traditional television career, Melendez kind of pivoted into the modern creator economy. He launched these live streams with titles like Beer on the Balcony, mostly to offer political commentary and just casual interaction with fans.
But that pivot birthed this entire interconnected web of internet drama that people online call the Dabbleverse. Like a whole cottage industry of critics sprung up specifically to analyze, mock, and just react to Melendez's live streams.
Yeah, you have Carl Heberger, who co-created a show called Who Are These Podcasts? And then there's Shuli Egar, who's actually another Howard Stern Show alumni. He runs the Shuli Network, or TSN.
Right, and they built these highly lucrative shows. Like TSN has The Uncle Rico Show, which is dedicated entirely to critiquing Melendez's content.
Which brings us to the friction between these two sides, right? Because that directly explains the first piece of our source material, which is a GoFundMe campaign organized by Shuli Egar. It's titled Help Defend TSN, the Shuli Network.
Yeah, and the fundraiser's core argument is that TSN is basically under an existential attack via YouTube's automated copyright strike system. They claim they are being hit with false strikes that are designed solely to silence their commentary.
Right, and if you spend any time watching creators on YouTube, you have probably seen someone complain about the copyright strike system because the mechanics of it completely invert the traditional legal process.
Totally. Normally, if someone infringes on your property, you have to take them to court, prove your case before a judge, and then a penalty is imposed.
Exactly. But on YouTube, the platform's automated system just applies the penalty immediately based on a user's claim. So the burden of proof shifts entirely onto the accused creator to get that penalty removed.
And it's high stakes because 3 of those strikes and YouTube permanently deletes the entire channel. It literally erases a creator's livelihood overnight.
Wow.
Yeah, so TSN views the deployment of these strikes not as a legitimate defense of intellectual property, but as a weaponization of platform guidelines to just destroy their freedom of speech and creative expression. So they were crowdsourcing legal fees to defend their right to fair use and parody.
This entire dynamic, it's like Statler and Waldorf, the two old guys in the balcony on The Muppet Show. Imagine them building their own highly profitable commercial theater solely to heckle Fozzie Bear.
That is a perfect analogy.
Right, and now Fozzie is trying to get the local authorities to shut their theater down by claiming like they are illegally using his act to sell tickets.
Exactly. And the GoFundMe itself serves as this perfect artifact of how internet warfare manifests as legal fundraising. Like, out of the roughly $2,400 they raised toward their $20,000 goal, the financial backing is entirely crowdsourced from the very trolls and fans who just consume this drama.
Oh, I saw that. The top donations are just dripping with inside internet jokes.
Yeah, there's a $200 contribution under the name Eric the Actor, who, is a famous deceased Howard Stern caller, and a $100 donation from a user named Dabble Battle telling TSN to, quote, fight the enemy.
It's incredible. But, a YouTube channel strike is just a platform dispute. It's managed by algorithms. To actually enforce his claims and seek financial damages, Melendez had to take this conflict out of Silicon Valley's automated systems and drop it into a physical New York County Supreme Court.
Which is a massive escalation.
Yeah.
And this brings us to the actual lawsuit filing.
Right. Case number 160-416-2025.
And this specific filing is what the Kiwi Farms community, which is a forum known for obsessively tracking internet figures, they've dubbed it a lawsuit.
A lawsuit.
Yeah, it's internet shorthand for legal action that's perceived as frivolous, absurd, or just fundamentally doomed to fail. Melendez is suing Heberger, Egar, and their networks for a combined $600,000.
Half compensatory and half punitive damages.
Exactly. Split right down the middle.
So the primary legal foundation for that $600,000 demand, it really hinges on two concepts. Unauthorized commercial use of name, image, likeness, and voice, and then common law misappropriation of right of publicity.
Right. And right of publicity fundamentally guarantees that you, and only you, get to profit off your own identity. It's the exact legal mechanism that stops a local car dealership from just putting Tom Cruise on a billboard without paying him.
Right, but Melendez is attempting to apply that traditional celebrity endorsement law to the modern ecosystem of reaction content. He argues that by broadcasting shows entirely focused on him, WATP and TSN have crossed a line from commentary into becoming an unauthorized alternative source of Stuttering John content.
Wait, an unauthorized alternative source?
Yeah, he is claiming they have usurped a potential market that rightfully belongs to him. And I think this highlights a fundamental paradox of the modern internet.
How so?
Well, the exact same behavior that builds a creator's fame and keeps them culturally relevant, other channels reacting to their videos, can actively cannibalize their financial market. The reaction channels create this secondary market that fulfills the audience's desire to consume the content, but the original creator never sees a dime of that ad revenue.
That is a really sharp point. And that secondary market is precisely what the lawsuit targets. However, the News 15 reporting, which is corroborated by the court filings discussed on the forums, details the wildly absurd methods allegedly used to gather some of this unauthorized content.
Oh, this is where it gets crazy.
It really does. The lawsuit claims that Shuli Egar coerced a 25-year-old aspiring comedian named Kate Meany into secretly recording explicit, private phone calls with Melendez.
The mechanics of that alleged coercion are intense, too. The suit claims Egar had been publicly ridiculing Meany on his shows and basically promised to stop the harassment only if she provided him with these recorded conversations.
And it goes further. It alleges Egar threatened to publicly spread false rumors that Meany was romantically involved with Melendez if she refused to comply.
Just wild. And then those secretly recorded tapes featuring Melendez discussing his personal life were then allegedly played for a live audience of hundreds of ticket holders at a convention in Rochester, New York.
A convention literally called DabbleCon 2.
Yes, TabbleCon 2, which was simultaneously broadcast worldwide via a pay-per-view link.
And the forum commenters immediately pointed out the massive jurisdictional nightmare regarding those tapes, because Melendez filed this lawsuit in New York State Supreme Court.
Right, and New York is a one-party consent state for recording conversations, meaning only one person on the phone call needs to be aware the recording is taking place.
Exactly. But the commenters alleged the calls were actually recorded while Melendez was residing in California. And California operates under strict two-party consent laws, meaning both individuals must explicitly agree to the recording.
Which creates severe legal friction. Like, you're evaluating whether tapes potentially recorded illegally under California privacy laws can be broadcast at a commercial convention in New York, and how that impacts a misappropriation claim.
The legal complexities of the tapes are definitely fascinating, but the lawsuit takes a sharp turn into sheer absurdity with the physical evidence.
Oh, the couch cushions.
The couch cushions. Melendez's representation claims that Heberger and Egar stole Melendez's discarded sofa cushions and displayed them as a physical exhibit for the ticket holders at DabbleCon 2.
Wait, they took his actual garbage?
Allegedly, yes.
Yeah.
They took the cushions he threw out when moving, transported them all the way to Rochester, and used them as a prop to mock him. And he's citing this as a violation of his privacy.
Which, the internet community immediately seized on this specific claim because the underlying legal logic just falls apart under basic scrutiny. When you take physical property, like a couch cushion, and intentionally abandon it on a public curb for trash collection, you legally surrender any reasonable expectation of privacy or ownership regarding that item.
Exactly. Claiming a privacy violation over abandoned garbage feels fundamentally incompatible with established property law.
And that skepticism regarding the legal logic extends directly to Melendez's legal representation, Tabor Benedict. The Kiwi Farms forums note that Benedict allegedly misspelled his own name in the official court filings.
You're kidding.
No, and furthermore, commenters digging into his background highlighted that he previously served time in prison for a vehicular incident that severely injured someone and is currently attempting to restart his law career. One user bluntly summarized the internet's perception of him as a, quote, Timo Patrick Bateman.
Wow. So you have a highly skeptical audience watching a lawyer with a controversial past file a $600,000 lawsuit over public garbage and reaction streams. It's very easy to see why the lawsuit label stuck.
Yeah, totally.
But to understand whether there is any viable legal architecture beneath this whole chaotic filing, we really have to look at the last time Melendez tested this exact right of publicity strategy in federal court.
Right, we have to look at the history here. In 2022, Melendez filed a massive federal lawsuit against SiriusXM. Because when Howard Stern signed his $500 million deal with SiriusXM back in 2006, the agreement included the rights to roughly 13,000 hours of audio and video archives from the show's history.
And Melendez, having been a major part of the broadcast for 15 years, was featured prominently throughout those archives.
Exactly. So SiriusXM utilized excerpts from those archival episodes, specifically clips featuring Melendez's voice and identity in their online and on-air advertisements to promote the Howard Stern channels.
And Melendez sued. He claimed that SiriusXM used his persona and image for their own commercial gain without his permission, violating his right of publicity under California law.
His argument was basically that while they had the right to play the old shows, they did not have the right to use his voice specifically in a commercial to sell satellite radio subscriptions without additional compensation.
Right, but the 2022 Second Circuit Federal Appellate Court ruling completely dismantled that argument. They dismissed his case with prejudice, meaning the decision is final and cannot be refiled.
And that ruling hinged entirely on the Federal Copyright Act, right? Because the Federal Copyright Act essentially acts as a trump card over state-level right of publicity laws when the two come into conflict.
Yes, it operates under a legal doctrine called statutory preemption. Statutory preemption establishes that federal law overrules state law when they overlap or contradict.
Why?
The court utilized a strict two-part test to determine if the Copyright Act preempted Melendez's California right of publicity claim.
Which was the subject matter requirement and the general scope requirement.
Exactly. So looking at the subject matter requirement, the court has to figure out what the actual asset in dispute is. Melendez argued the asset was his persona and his identity, which are not things you can copyright.
Right.
But the court looked at the reality of the situation and determined the asset in dispute was simply a tangible audio tape. Physical sound recordings, fixed at a tangible medium, fall explicitly under the protection of the Federal Copyright Act.
So because Sirius already owned the rights to the recordings of his voice, he couldn't use state right of publicity laws to kind of double dip and demand more money just because his personality is on those recordings.
Exactly. SiriusXM was not hiring a voice actor to imitate Stuttering John's cadence for a new commercial. They were simply playing the archival tapes they legally licensed. The court noted that you cannot use state right of publicity laws as a disguised mechanism to control a copyrighted work that you do not own.
It's the legal equivalent of attempting to sue a movie theater for putting your face on a promotional poster when the theater already holds the legal license to screen your movie.
Precisely. And then the second part of the test, the general scope requirement, looks at the nature of the rights being claimed. Melendez tried to argue that because California's right of publicity law requires a commercial purpose to initiate a lawsuit, that specific commercial element made his claim entirely different from a standard copyright dispute.
But the court didn't buy that.
Not at all. The court rejected that distinction entirely. They clarified that commercial interests and the right to control distribution are inherently foundational to copyright law.
So attempting to frame a copyright dispute as a publicity violation simply because money is involved doesn't change the fundamental nature of the conflict.
Right. Melendez was ultimately just trying to stop SiriusXM from rebroadcasting a copyrighted work they had the legal rights to utilize, so federal copyright law preempted his state claims.
Which is huge. And connecting that 2022 SiriusXM precedent back to the current Dabbleverse drama playing out in the New York Supreme Court reveals a massive shift in the legal battleground.
Because SiriusXM paid for a license to the Howard Stern archives. Carl Hebberger and Shuli Egar do not own a license to John Melendez's live streams. They are not authorized commercial distributors of beer on the balcony.
So without a licensing agreement to shield them, TSN and WATP must rely entirely on the legal doctrine of fair use. Fair use allows the limited use of copyrighted material without acquiring permission from the rights holders, specifically for purposes like criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, or parody.
And this circles right back to the core argument of the TSN GoFundMe campaign. When Shuli Egar claims they are defending free expression against false copyright strikes, they are asserting that their commentary and mockery of Melendez's live streams falls squarely under fair use.
They are arguing they're transforming the original work by adding substantial critical commentary, rather than merely copying it to steal his audience.
But Melendez's lawsuit counters that assertion by claiming the transformation is insufficient. He says that the commentary channels operate purely as that unauthorized alternative source we talked about earlier.
Right. He argues they use his name and image in thumbnails not for critical parody, but merely to bait his audience and drive revenue away from his original streams and into their own pockets.
And this is why the mechanics of this case matter to anyone observing the modern digital landscape. As absurd as the details are, aging shock jocks fighting over abandoned furniture and secretly recorded phone calls, the conflict represents a massive gray area in the creator economy.
We're watching legal frameworks built decades ago for analog media, like VCRs and cassette tapes, buckle under the weight of the modern digital ecosystem.
It is a fundamental stress test of how automated platforms and human judges handle the friction between competing rights. You have a creator's right to control their image and financial viability, colliding directly with a platform's rigid, automated copyright strike system.
Which in turn collides with a commentator's First Amendment right to free speech, critique, and parody.
And the judicial system is notoriously slow at adapting to internet culture. A judge in New York is going to have to look at the Dabbleverse, analyze the mechanics of DabbleCon 2, define the concept of internet reaction streams, and attempt to apply traditional right of publicity laws to this incredibly layered, hostile ecosystem.
Yeah, as one Kiwi Farms user brilliantly observed, if you tried to explain the Dabbleverse to a judge, their head would probably collapse into a singularity.
Honestly, yeah. We have tracked a truly bizarre journey today. It started with a GoFundMe campaign where internet trolls are crowdsourcing a legal defense fund utilizing the names of deceased radio callers.
And it escalated into a $600,000 Supreme Court lawsuit featuring allegations of coerced recordings, stolen couch cushions paraded at conventions, and lawyers with deeply controversial pasts.
But we anchored all of that digital absurdity in a very real 2022 federal precedent, where a court clearly defined that you cannot use right of publicity laws to overrule a legitimate copyright license, which saved SiriusXM, but left the door wide open for these exact types of battles over fair use on YouTube.
It is the perfect storm of public personas, intellectual property, and monetized internet animosity. But, I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder that builds on the mechanics we've explored today, looking just a little bit further down the road into the future of media.
Okay, what are you thinking?
Well, Melendez is currently utilizing the court system to fight human podcasters who are acting as unauthorized alternative sources of his content. But what happens in the very near future when this exact legal framework collides with generative AI?
Oh, wow. The implications of that technology applied to this precedent are just staggering.
Think about it. SiriusXM legally holds the copyright to 13,000 hours of archives featuring Melendez. What if someone trains an advanced AI model exclusively on those 13,000 hours of audio?
A user could generate an infinite, procedurally generated parodic Stuttering John live stream that runs 24 hours a day on YouTube.
Exactly. The digital ghost would be saying brand new things the human never actually said, but utilizing his exact cadence, vocabulary, and persona.
So would the Federal Copyright Act protect the creator of that AI stream because they utilized legally licensed material to train the algorithm? Or would the state-level right of publicity laws finally provide the original human being the legal authority to pull the plug on an unauthorized digital clone?
It is a legal collision that is inevitably coming, and when it finally reaches a courtroom, it is going to make the battle over DabbleCon 2 and discarded couch cushions look like a simple warm-up act.
The laws governing the digital frontier are truly being written in real time by the most absurd cases imaginable.
Thanks for diving deep with us.